Okay, so this is the problem that we had. Okay, I'm not going to read the problem because I think gave you time to read. This is the background to activity-based costing. So if you look at the question carefully, there are three products being produced, P, Q, and R. The labor hours and machine hours per unit required have been given. The material costs per unit have been given. The volume is given. Direct labor costs per hour have been given. The most important statement here is production overheads are absorbed on a machine hour basis. Okay. Now, whenever we do the costing in the legacy costing framework, the we always start by starting with raw materials, then labor, and then we add up to the overheads. And in the legacy costing, the characteristic is overheads are absorbed based on effort intensive basis. So it could be on the base of labor hours or on the basis of machine hours. So we will take the raw material costs are, I think, directly given. So for the products, so we don't need to do anything there, right? It is directly given 20, 12, and 25. Labor, if you see, the labor rate is what? Six rupees per hour. But what we are doing is we are doing product costing. So we need the cost per unit of production. So rupees per hour multiplied by hours per unit should give you your rupees per unit. So 6 per hour into 0.5 is 3 rupees per unit for P. 6 per hour into 1.5 is 9 rupees per unit for Q. 6 per hour into 1 hour per unit is 6 rupees per unit for product R. Now we come to the overheads, which is absorbed on the basis of 28 rupees per machine hour. Now, machine hours per unit has also been given. So 28 per machine hour into 1.5 machine hours per unit makes it 42 rupees per unit for P. 28 rupees per machine hour into 1 machine hour per unit makes it 28 for Q. And 28 into 3 makes it 84 for R. If you sum up the material, labor, and overhead costs, you will get the total cost per unit to be 65 for P, 49 for Q, and 115 for R. Do you have an observation when you look at this data? The observation is very simple. R is the product. R is the product which has taken. R is the product which has taken the maximum number of machine hours. तो सबसे ज्यादा कॉस्ट वहां पे एलोकेट हो गया है. May or may not be right. I'm not sure at this stage, right? I'm just telling you one observation. Now we will move to the your activity based costing, जिसके लिए हमें कुछ homework करना पड़ेगा, and that is find out at least the total machine hours, right? Now, for P, Q, and R, you have 1.5 machine hours per unit, 1 machine hour per unit, and 3 machine hours for every unit of production. You are producing and selling 750 units for P, 1250 units for Q, and 7,000 units for R, right? So how many machine hours are you taking? 1.5 hours per unit into 750 units, 1 hour per unit into 1250 units, 3 hours per unit into 7,000 units. सो अगर आप देखोगे आपके टोटल मशीन आवर्स आर 23,375 machine hours. The question is, what struck me that मैंने अभी पहले machine hours को calculate किया, because मुझे rate per hour दिया हुआ है. So if you multiply the absorption rate per hour with the machine hours, you will get the overhead cost, isn't it? So 28 rupees per hour का machine hour rate है हमारा. 28 rupees per machine hour multiplied with the total machine hours, आपको क्या मिलेगा? You will get the total overhead costs, which is 6,54,500. हमें टोटल ओवरहेड कॉस्ट मिलेंगे तभी तो हम उसको एक्यूरेटली स्प्लिट करेंगे ना. सो दैट्स व्हाई आई गॉट द टोटल मशीन आवर्स फर्स्ट एंड देन multiplied it with the machine hour rate to arrive at the overhead costs that are required. Now we will break up the costs to set up machinery, material handling and inspection. Percentages क्या हैं आपके? 35%, 20%, 15% and 30%. बराबर? So what are your overhead costs then relating to each of these? 6,54,500 into 35% is relating to setups. 6,54,500 into 20% is related to machinery. 6,54,500 का 15% is related to material handling. And 6,54,500 into inspection into 30% will be related to inspection. अगर आप इन सबको ऐड करोगे, obvious सी बात है कि you will arrive at the total overhead costs which are split into 4 different activities. कौन सी activities? Setup, machinery, material handling and inspection. अभी हमने क्या किया? हमारे प्रोसेस को हमने एक्टिविटीज में बांट दिया. Now what is the next step? Link your activity with the drivers, cost drivers. ये हमारे cost drivers हैं. So the first step we will do is find out the cost per driver. Okay. Now what are your drivers? You have how many setups? 670 setups. मशीनरी के लिए ऑब्वियस सी बात है कि आप मशीन पर टोटल मशीन आवर्स से डिवाइड करोगे. ऑब्वियस. व्हाट इज योर ड्राइवर फॉर मटेरियल हैंडलिंग? 120 मटेरियल मूवमेंट्स एंड 1000 इंस्पेक्शंस. सो इससे आपको क्या मिलेगा? कॉस्ट पर यूनिट ऑफ द ड्राइवर मिल जाएगा, CPD, which is nothing but your overhead cost, respective overhead cost divided by the driver. That we will get for all. अब हमको क्या करना है? हमें सिंपली इसको P, Q और R के कंजम्पशन से मल्टीप्लाई करना है to allocate the cost effectively to P, Q and R. So this is a much better approach because we have linked activities and drivers and assigned the cost based on that. So the ambiguity is reduced to a lot of extent. In fact, to the extent of being eliminated, and accuracy of your costing is going to increase. Am I clear? So यहाँ पे अगर आप देखोगे, what are the total number of setups for P, Q and R? 75, 115 and 480. So just multiply this with 75, 115 and 480. Right? What about machinery? 5.6 per machine hour into machine hours पता है हमें कितना है P, Q and R के लिए? 1125, 1250 and 21,000 machine hours. Right? Material handling के लिए it is 818.13 per material movement. How many material movements for P, Q and R? 12, 21 and 87. 12, 21, 87. Right? उसी तरीके से now what we will do is we will also find out the for inspection 196.35 into 150, 180 and 670. Clear? So this is the cost which is related to setups, machinery, material handling and inspection. Now what we will do is we can just take a total of these costs. Just take a total. You will get the same costs that you got here, which means now I have effectively apportioned the costs between P, Q and R. देखो same cost है, लेकिन अब वो बराबर से split हो गया. Right? So now what we will do is, if you add this up, 6,54,500 आया. So what we have done, we have broken up these overhead costs based on cost per driver and multiplied it by respective consumptions of P, Q and R. और हमने overhead cost को effectively apportion कर दिया between P, Q and R. Now what we will do next is we can straight away jump to the cost per unit. These are my overhead costs, right? अब हम क्या करेंगे, इसका टोटल लेंगे. So this is the overhead cost allocable to P, Q, R. Now you know very well what are the number of units that you have produced. Don't you know it? You know it. कितने units produce हुए P, Q and R के? 750, 1250 and 7,000. तो इससे आपको क्या मिलेगा? You will get the accurate overhead cost per unit. और जैसे कि मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया, चाहे लेगेसी कॉस्टिंग हो, चाहे कोई और टेक्निक हो, रॉ मटेरियल एंड लेबर में कोई तकलीफ नहीं है, बिकॉज वो एनीवेज आइडेंटिफाएबल है, तो हम उसको बराबर से इफेक्टिवली एलोकेट कर रहे हैं. सो देयर इज नो प्रॉब्लम इन रॉ मटेरियल एंड लेबर. दैट इज गोइंग टू बी द सेम एज इट वाज अर्लियर. व्हाट इज गोइंग टू चेंज? What is going to change? The overhead cost per unit, which is now not arbitrary but accurate. So now we can get your total cost per unit, which is 117.95, 100.07 and 100.21. अब आप क्या करो, इसको इससे कंपेयर करो. हमारा कॉस्ट क्या होना चाहिए था पी का? 117.95, लेकिन लेगेसी कॉस्टिंग के हिसाब से इट वाज 65. सो वाज इट अंडर प्राइस्ड और ओवर प्राइस्ड? अंडर प्राइस्ड. हमारा कॉस्ट क्यू का होना चाहिए था 100.07, लेकिन है कितना? 49. अंडर प्राइस्ड और ओवर प्राइस्ड? अंडर प्राइस्ड. आर के केस में 100.21 होना चाहिए था, है कितना? 115. ओवर प्राइस्ड. तो हमने क्या किया, एक तरफ कुआं दूसरी तरफ पाइप. सो पी और क्यू में वी अंडर प्राइस्ड, मतलब हमने अपने हाथ से अपनी कबर खोद दी. वी कुड नॉट इवन गेट द मार्जिन्स दैट वी राइटफुली डिजर्व्ड. एंड आर में वी इनवाइटेड पीपल टू लीव अस एंड गो टू द कॉम्पिटिशन. Just because your cost records were not accurate, therefore you did not accurately cost the products. Because you did not accurately cost the products, you did not accurately price them. Some products remain underpriced, eroded your margins, potential margins. Some products became overpriced and you lost customers to competition. That's why activity-based costing is a technique which is recommended over legacy costing techniques. Okay, I hope that was clear. Thank you.